What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your depressed host, Ian Ewing. I'm sure you've all heard it this week from your spouses, your friends, your family. It's just football. Who cares? People are dying out there. I know I heard that from my wife. I know you guys are all upset. Let's talk about it. We're going to have a little therapy session on today's episode and go over the Broncos game, which was probably one of the most depressing losses in Packers history. Definitely the worst one, in my opinion, since the 2014 NFC Championship game. Your opinions may vary. I think the 2021 playoff loss to the 49ers was pretty bad too. But yeah, we're recording this on Wednesday. I still feel pretty down in the dumps. So let's do a therapy session, guys. So the Packers in this game, right? 8 minutes into the third quarter on an 11-2 team. They're up by 9 points, 2 scores. They're about to go down and go up by more. Jordan Love drops back to pass. Christian Watson has 3 steps on Pat Surtain Jr. Jordan gets hit, which is a common theme in the second half of this game, by the way. Underthrows it slightly, and Pat Surtain makes an absolutely incredible interception. That interception set off a domino effect of epic proportions. Christian Watson gets hurt on the play, injures his chest, shoulder, whatever the hell it is. And now, luckily, he's not out long-term. In fact, he just practiced today. This injury set in motion some of the worst injury luck that I've seen in my entire life as a football fan. So the Broncos, they get the ball on their own 30 after the interception, right? Packers defense starts to look mortal. The Broncos drive down the field for a touchdown. Packers get the ball back. They do not score. The Broncos take over again. On that drive, Bo Nix drops back to pass, rolls right, throws a ball right to Xavier McKinney, right through his hands, drops an easy interception on the sidelines. If he makes that play, and by the way, he probably makes that play 95 times out of 100. I don't know if the Micah injury happens, but a few plays later, after McKinney's dropped interception, Micah Parsons tears his ACL and ends his 2025 season. Probably puts him out until, if we're lucky, training camp, maybe early September, mid-September. So in a matter of 20 minutes, guys, and this is real minutes, not game minutes, the Packers go from beating a Super Bowl team in Denver, by the way, in Denver, on the road by 9 points. They end up not only losing the game, but lose your all-pro, all-world defensive superstar. Just gut-wrenching. It's not even a strong enough word, honestly, guys. To be honest, I turned the game off after Watson got hurt. I was in a pretty bad headspace. I was starting to get stressed out. Watson's probably the 5th, I don't know how you want to order it, most important player on the team. So, again, we're lucky he is not going to be out long term. He might even play this weekend. We found that out pretty shortly after the game, thankfully. But I'm glad I turned it off because I would have melted down in real time with all the injuries. Packers also lost Zach Tom in the late first half. And up to that point, I thought the offensive line played really, really well. They actually played pretty decent after he left too. But then when it became obvious that the Packers had to throw the ball to catch up, the Broncos' lethal pass rush, to call it what it is, lethal, they took over the game at that point, as they probably should. So in addition to Micah, Zach Tom, Christian Watson, they also lost Evan Williams, who's probably their, I'd maybe say, 7th most important player. And then Jaden Reed also goes out in this game. They lost Josh Wiley, their tight end, also. Again, your mileage may vary on him. He's probably fine. But again, in this episode, we're going to talk through how the Packers can move forward, and then we'll answer the question at the end. Are they still a Super Bowl team or not without Micah Parsons? But let's recap the game briefly first, begrudgingly. The first thing we'll do here is go through the top 5 players on offense from PFF. Josh Jacobs was number 1, 88.3. Josh was insanely good in this game. The catch that he had for the touchdown over Dre Greenlaw is one of the plays of the year, honestly. It's probably going to be a top 5 catch of the year for the Packers. One of the better ones I've seen in the NFL, too, and especially when you consider it's his 2nd career receiving touchdown. That's it. I mean, to show off that kind of strong-handed ability, I mean, whatever you want to say, right? Jordan saw him one-on-one against a linebacker. He took the matchup, made a perfect throw, one of many good throws from Jordan in this game, and Jacobs had some strong-ass hands, held on to it all the way to the ground. It was insane. Then he had the touchdown run, obviously, in the third quarter. He just looked really explosive in this game. And honestly, there were a lot of places to run in this game, too, against a really, really good Denver defense. They obviously had to get away from the run a little bit because of where the score was, but again, We're going to talk a lot today about why we should be optimistic going forward and pessimistic. We'll do both. But seeing how Josh Jacobs ran the ball, but more importantly, how the offensive line blocked for him when they did run, that should be pretty encouraging. Number 2 is Matthew Golden, 82.3. All the Golden is a draft bust. People got really quiet after Sunday. I didn't hear any of that in comments. I'm not going to put whoever it was on blast, but I did get a question from a person I knew from back in high school. I'm not going to out your name, bro. Is Matthew Golden a bust? Why do we always pick bad players in the first round? It's like, dude, we cannot. We are 16 weeks through his first season. And when he's played this year, he's been really good. And yet again, in this game, this is probably his best game as a pro. So the Matthew Golden is a bust crowd got really quiet. I thought Matthew Golden played outstanding. Every route that he ran, he got open, it seemed. When you watched all 22, he dusted a few, had a couple of really good routes. Dusted Riley Moss on one of them, who's a really good cornerback. He just looked really shifty in this game. He had really good route running. He had a couple of routes on Riley Moss where he literally had him turned backwards, and he got open the whole game. And that's partly why his grade was so good. He had 3 catches in this game for 55 yards, I believe. It's not a crazy game, but PFF is considering how often you're getting open against coverage, and he got open a lot. So again, I think he's going to get a lot more opportunities in the coming weeks, regardless of what happens with Christian Watson this week. I do think Watson's going to play. I don't know why you would practice today if you weren't. But we'll see, right? I think he's going to get more opportunities regardless. Darian Kennard was the 3rd overall player for them. Their highest graded lineman. When he came in for Zach Tom, he played pretty well. He had a 73.9. I actually think it's going to be pretty surprising if Zach Tom plays this weekend against the Bears. I doubt it saying he's going to be out for sure. Obviously, we don't know. But he did not practice today. He did not practice yesterday. Matt LaFleur did his whole, we'll give him up till game time. But I would be pretty surprised if he played today or this week. So, Darian Kennard, not a great player, but certainly good depth. The Bears don't really have a lot of good pass rushers, honestly. It's just going to come down to if they can pick up blitzes or not. So we'll see. I think if they have to play Kennard this week, this is probably the one to do it. And then you get Zach Tom back for the Ravens game. Number 4 was Jordan Love. Yeah, Jordan Love, despite the 2 interceptions, he was a bit inaccurate early. I know many other people have talked about this too. Even on some of his completions early, and some of it was because he was getting pressured, right? He got pressured on 55% of his snaps in this game, which is insane, by the way. He was a little inaccurate on some of his routes. I thought that pass breakup to Dobbs in the corner there in the first quarter, I thought that could have been a touchdown, honestly, if he put it out there a little bit better. There were just a couple throws that were off. Golden's first catch on the crosser, if he had put that out in front of him a little bit more and give Golden some room to run, I think he could have had a touchdown there. There was the longer completion to Musgrave where he had to lay out and catch it, which insane catch by Musgrave, by the way. And on that route, Luke Musgrave absolutely dusted Hufanga, which is a really good player, by the way. So I really liked what I saw from Musgrave. We don't have time to talk about everybody in this game, but I thought Musgrave deserves a shout out. If Jordan had delivered that ball on time and where it was supposed to go, I actually think Musgrave could have scored on that one. So, again, Jordan was just a little bit off early, and then it didn't help that later in the second half, he lost Watson, he lost Reed, and then he lost Zach Tom, and he was getting beat up pretty bad. But he did have some really good throws. Overall, I thought he played a good game. The back foot throw to the corner to Christian Watson on the flag route, that was a phenomenal throw. Number 5 was Romeo Doubs, 68.5. I thought Matt LaFleur called a really outstanding game in this one. He just had answers for Vance Joseph the entire time on offense. This is the best that any team has moved the ball in the Broncos this whole season. I thought he mixed the run and pass in well. There was a lot of creativity. He just seemed like he was one step ahead of Vance Joseph the whole game. Up until he wasn't, and they had to keep throwing it, of course. I just mentioned how Jordan was under pressure the whole game. It really didn't happen until later in the game. The first 2 quarters, maybe early 3, when they were ahead 23 to 10 or whatever it was. Forgot the score at that time. They essentially 23 to 14. That's what it was. Sorry. Their offensive line played pretty well at that point, and Denver is, we talked about in the pregame episode, an insanely talented pass rush. So for them to hold up as well as they did against this front, I thought was really, really impressive. So again, I think that there's still a lot to work on, but we're seeing some pretty good improvement from the Packers offensive line here. So again, Watson dodged a bullet. That's a win. Zach Tom probably will be out this week, but overall, the offensive game plan probably got shaken up quite a bit when those players left. So I do think that they can build on this, but I'm not overly surprised it happened the way it did. Defensive top 5. Xavier McKinney was number 1 with 91.5 grade. That was his best game of 2025. But those 2 dropped interceptions loom large here today. The Packers had 4 dropped picks in this game. It just feels like every game they're dropping at least 1 or 2. And even if they hang on to a few of them, right, this game might have been different. It certainly might have been different with Micah. Of course, you can't look at it that way, but, an ACL injury, a non-contact ACL injury, this isn't some sort of built-up issue that eventually it's just going to snap. It's literally just the luck of the draw. You just step the wrong way and you tear your ACL. So, again, not saying that it wouldn't have happened if Xavier McKinney catches that ball, but it might not have happened, right? So, got to move on. Number 2, RIP, Micah Parsons, 90.8. He was playing outstanding in this game before he got hurt. He had the forced fumble in the first quarter on RJ Harvey. That was a great play. He had 5 pressures in, 2.5 quarters. So another really good game from Micah, RIP. Number 3 is Rashawn Gary. He had 5 pressures in this game. He had a 74.8 grade. So I thought this was one of his better games of the season. He was getting a couple quick pressures on Bo Nix. He won a couple of reps against a really good offensive line. I'll just say this. Rashawn Gary needs to be at the top of his game the rest of the season. We've seen him do it. It's not like he can't do it, guys. We've seen Rashawn Gary be a top 10 pass rusher in the league. That's why he got paid like it. Even in 2023 when he came back from his ACL, he had a run there where he was playing out of his mind good. So you have to think that it's in him. Can we see it the rest of the year? I think the Packers' success on defense is going to be pretty dependent on guys like Gary playing a lot better. So good game in this one. I was impressed with his tape. Edgerrin Cooper was number 4, 73 grade even. I thought Cooper played better than this grade, if I'm being honest, but I think he also dropped an interception. He did recover the fumble in the first quarter as well. So good game from Coop. He had a tackle for loss on 4th down, I believe, as well. Carrington Valentine was number 5, 65.8. Carrington was frustrating in this one because there was that play. I think it was off to the left. Bo Nix threw it to the left. Carrington Valentine read it like a book. I think if he had just sold out to get the interception there, he could have had a pick 6. But I think you could tell he was not sure if he was going to get there or not, so he kind of pulled up a bit. And then not only did he pull up, he missed the tackle. So that's been the case with Carrington all season. I think teams have figured out the dude can't tackle, so they're just throwing little bubble screens over there to see if he's going to make the play or not. But he did cover well in this one, 65 grade overall. So again, Carrington, we're going to need you to step up, buddy. Overall, the defense, pretty disappointing, especially the play of the cornerbacks, particularly Keyshawn Nixon. Cortland Sutton for the Broncos had a really good game. I went into the preview show saying, oh, yeah, Cortland Sutton's a good player, but he's not a great player. He's nothing we have to be too concerned about. Then he completely dominated the game. Partly due to bad reps from Nixon, but also there was a play where Next Gen had him at 23 miles an hour on I think it was a fade route. I mean, the dude's talented, right? And I do like Nixon, but I think that the Broncos started targeting him a little bit in this game, and it started to work. I've seen this narrative about Micah. After Micah left, they couldn't get any pressure. I do want to say the Packers got 22 pressures in this game, which is double any other game that the Broncos have played. They've not given up that many pressures all season. So, and again, if you even put Micah's in there or take his out, right, the 5 that he got, that's still 17. So, again, I think some of it was manufactured through game or through scheme. But, again, that's the kind of thing we're going to need to see here as we go forward without Micah Parsons. But, guys, I just want to leave the defense on this. Bo Nix played the game of his life on Sunday. And I want to personally apologize. I know he listens to this podcast, my guy Bo Nix. But I said that if you make Bo Nix beat you, he can't. And he absolutely did. 4 touchdowns, 300 yards passing, I believe. Just out of his mind good this game. Packers completely shut down RJ Harvey. He didn't have any success in this game, not really. And Bo Nix just lit up the Packers' backfield. And again, there were opportunities to get interceptions. If some of those plays had been made, maybe it was different, right? But I thought Bo Nix was just really, really good in this one. They scored 34 points in large part due to how well he played. when they did get pressure on him, he was able to get outside the pocket quite a bit. I thought that this was the game of his life. I don't know if we'll ever see a Bo Nix game better than this, but I digress. So, massively concerned, again, how they're going to get pressure. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they got pressure in this one, but it only matters if you disrupt the quarterback. And even though he was disrupted, he still was able to make plays. So, again, the defense, this is one of their worst games of the year. It was disappointing. I thought the defense was going to black this team out to like 10 points, 10, 13 points. So it's disappointing. I told you guys coming in, and I was obviously wrong, and I will take the L all day long. If the Packers score 20 points in this game, they're going to win. The Packers score 26. The Broncos score 34. So anyway, let's address the elephant in the room. How bad is this Micah Parsons injury? So I want to start off by saying I'm completely devastated by this. If you haven't noticed through listening to this show the whole year, even the first episode of this season, I'm a massive fan of Micah Parsons, independent of being a Packer fan. Excuse me. When these elite guys get hurt like this, it just hurts the game. Now, I hate Pat Mahomes. I think he's just lame, and I think he's actually a bit overrated, which is a pretty hot take, but I don't want to see the dude tear his ACL. Like, you want to see, I'm going to call him a top 10 quarterback out there every week, one who's as accomplished as he is. You just don't want to see these guys get hurt like this. Even Tucker Kraft. As far as you guys know the impact he has on this team. They acquired him in August. I believe it was August 27th. It was the day I was moving, ironically. Whatever the last Thursday in August was, that was the day they acquired him. Their Super Bowl chances increased dramatically when they did, right? They went from having the 8th best odds to the 4th, I believe, making the Super Bowl. And then as the season's gone on, he's been easily the 2nd best defensive player in football. And you could argue that he's been more clutch than Myles Garrett has. And you could see he's taken over games when the Packers needed it most. And the Browns defense has a lot of good players around him, right? I'm not saying the Packers don't too. We'll talk about that. But you could see how the kind of impact that he's had and how much he's impacted the pass rush, right? Without citing the numbers, I'll just give you guys the bad news. We'll start with the bad news. They're the 4th best defense in the league in EPA per play when he's on the field. When he's not, they're 19th. So they're getting into the bottom half of the league when he's not out there. And then they're in the top 5 of the league when he is. So let's start with the bad news. So I'm going to start with this. To this point, no one has... Bad news point number 1. We'll start there. Nobody else on the team has really gotten pressure outside of him this whole season. So PFF they've credited Micah with 79 pressures. The next closest person is Rashawn Gary with 47. And as you guys probably heard by now by somebody, maybe it's been on this show, Gary has not had a sack in like 7 games. Now, you can argue, I know I have, that the J.J. McCarthy pick where Gary hit him was actually a sack fumble. But the point still stands, right? He's not been as good as his contract would suggest. The third player in pressures is Devontae Wyatt. He's out the rest of the season, right? R.I.P. Lucas Van Ness, I do think would probably have been third had he, stayed healthy. And we'll talk about him in a minute as well. But the Packers to this point, they've not blitzed a lot because they haven't had to, right? They're in the bottom 5 in the league in the blitz rate. That's about to skyrocket without Micah. The issue is when you have cornerbacks like the Packers do, when you bring 5 guys or more on a blitz, that just takes bodies out of the backfield and you leave those corners on an island, which is fine if you get there and you disrupt the quarterback. But if you don't, you're screwed, right? So that's point number 1. There's not really anybody else on the team who's consistently gotten pressure this whole season. Now, that's not to say that somebody can't step up, but that's bad news, right? Bad news point number 2, the teams they have to beat have really good offensive lines, right? I'll say this a bit. We'll talk about it a bit more. The Packers are good enough to make the playoffs. They're good enough to maybe win a game in the playoffs, but Philadelphia, Seattle, LA, even Detroit, if they end up getting in, Chicago, they have really good pass-protecting offensive lines. And if you have Micah Parsons in the game, it can offset it a little bit, right? But let's just take Matt Stafford on LA, for example. If you blitz him, he's going to make you pay. It has not worked for anyone this year, blitzing him. So that means you're going to have to try to get pressure with 4, but as we just talked about, they have not been able to do that with any consistency without Micah. So, again, the only way you're going to get to the Super Bowl is to beat the Rams, and you're going to have to outscore them at this point. Now, is that possible? Yes. But you got to play one hell of a game on offense, and and we'll finish this point as we go here, but I don't know if we've seen that level from this team consistently this year, right? So they're going to have to manufacture pressure, obviously, and more than likely they're going to have to, come up with some sort of crazy blitz, leaving the cornerbacks on an island at some point that's going to burn them. And you hope it's not in the go-ahead touchdown in the NFC Championship game, or you don't make it all the way to the Super Bowl, and then the opening drive, Josh Allen drops back and hits Dalton Kincaid for 6 or whatever, right? So that's point number 2. They have to get through a lot of really good pass protection to advance in the playoffs, right? So not having Micah, that really hurts. Point number 3, this one might get people mad at me, right? But point number 3 is the defense has looked leaky at times with Micah Parsons. So you're not going to hear me come on here. I'm not going to talk bad about the defense, about how they're not good, because they are good. They're a top 5 defense, in my opinion. All the metrics back that up. They don't give up explosive plays. They're really good third down defense. They're good red zone defense, right? But they have given up a lot of plays. And those drives that we see where they just get paper cutted to death, there's already been a game plan that's worked against this team. Get it out quick. Just take your time. Don't make mistakes. And then you'll get into the end zone eventually. So again, that might be different now, but having Micah Parsons and winning with four-man pressures, that's covered up a lot of poor coverage from Nixon, Hobbs, Valentine. So him not being there anymore, right, with an already, I would call, leaky defense, that's scary, right? And he said it in the beginning of the game, or the beginning of the season, right? He makes cornerbacks a lot of money. That's scary because they're going to have to make their own money now. Just say that. Point number 4, you just chop off another way to win games. Simple as that. We saw it against Philly. We saw it against the Browns as well. We saw it against the Panthers. When your offense is bumpy, making mistakes, sloppy, whatever word you want to use, you could rely on the defense to win you a game if you have a bad game on offense, right? Not that this defense without Micah Parsons can't do that, because I do think they can, but it just becomes less likely. So now the only way you're going to win a game is on offense, and you're probably going to have to score 24 points. Whereas Micah, he's there. You can get away with a 14-point, 16-point game, and you can win that game, right? Because if you score 18 to 20, you're going to win those games. And you look at Philly, right? Their offense, the Packers' offense that game was hot dog water for the majority of that game, right? But they only lost 10-7 because their defense played outstanding. So they gave the Packers offense numerous chances to win that game. Now, again, thought there were some bad calls out there that kind of screwed them. Again, I don't want to play the whole ref card here, but there were also just misses from players that could have made plays in that Eagles game too. But if they play that Eagles game without Micah Parsons, the Eagles might score 20 points. It might be a 20-7 game. And there's no way with the way they were playing in that game that they were going to score 20 points. So without Micah, you just don't have as many ways to win. You can't bank on your defense giving up 15 to 20 points. You're going to have to figure they might give up 20 to 30 points in the wrong game, right? Just like last season. We'll talk about last season really quick against the good teams. So 2024, without Micah Parsons, the defense played well all season long. We'll talk about it. But the defense gave up 34 points to Philly in week 1, 31 to Minnesota in week 4. They gave up 24 to Detroit in that first game that season, 34 to Detroit in the second game. And then the final game against Minnesota, they gave up 27. So we've seen this season, right? When the offense plays well, they beat anybody. Absolutely anybody. And as we'll talk about in a minute, if this offense plays the way they did in the first half against Denver, how they played in this little stretch here, they can still be good. But, if Micah costs you 5 points a game on defense, you have to make it up on offense. So we'll see. It just lessens your chance by a wide margin. So we'll kind of leave it at that as far as the negatives. Now let's get into the reasons to be optimistic. Now, before I get into this, I want to start with a caveat. This is going to sound like I'm a bit more positive than I really am. And while the following things that we're going to talk about can happen, I think they're much less likely than I may be making it sound, to be honest. So let's start with point number 1. I kind of teased it earlier, right? The Packers defense was really good without Micah in 2024. And we thought it was going to be really good coming into this season, 2025. Let's not forget it, right? This Packers defense last year, They held the Super Bowl champion Eagles when they were playing their best, by the way. It wasn't like that little dog crap stretch early in the season with the Eagles. When they were playing their best, the Packers held them to 22 points at home. And really, it was like 16 points until mid-fourth quarter when the Packers had kind of lost every capable player on their team. Yes, that's how it went. The defense gave the Packers every chance possible to win that game on offense, right? Last season, the Packers had the 7th-ranked defense in DVOA. They were 6th in points per game allowed, 5th in yards per play, 4th in EPA per play, and 5th in yards per game. And this is before the Packers got Micah Parsons. This was coming into this season. We all felt pretty optimistic. And obviously there was a lot of talk about Jeff Hafley and his ability to become a head coach after this season. If he did that same thing that he did in 2024 in 2025, right? The only difference between this season and last is they had Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark. So let's talk about that quick. Kenny Clark last season was just objectively bad. Simple as that. He had a 60 overall grade last year from PFF. It was by far his worst season as a pro. Now, we did find out that he had a foot injury, and that doesn't change my point, but fair point, right? He's been a lot better this year in Dallas. Still not great, but better. Devontae Wyatt's a fair point. Last season, he had a really strong finish in the final stretch of games. He had 32 pressures the whole year last year, and 15 of them came from week 14 onward. But the Packers defense, like I said, was really, really good before Devontae Wyatt got going. So I don't think that, him and Kenny Clark being off this defense really changes it that much. Colby Wood in this season has been better than Kenny Clark was last year by far. So that means the combo of Brinson and Brooks have to match what Wyatt did, and I do think they can do that. But then you look at everybody else, right? Everyone else is either the same or they've gotten better. Carrington Valentine, I'd say he's gotten better. He's definitely taken a step as a coverage player. Evan Williams is a budding star. We just found out that he's going to be day-to-day, so he may miss the game this weekend, but I don't think he's going to be out long-term. You have Xavier McKinney. He's still Xavier McKinney. Edgerrin Cooper's improved without the splash plays, I will say. I do think he needs to make more of those, and I think he will, by the way. And we'll talk about why soon. Javon Bullard took a big step this season. He's one of the best slot players in the league. I know we're pissed about Rashawn Gary. He has more pressures this season and more pass rush wins than he did last season the entire year, and we still have 3 weeks to go. So, look, some of that is the benefit of having Micah Parsons, yes, but LVN's also better this year. Kingsley Enagbare was really bad last year coming off that knee injury. He's been much better this season. So you can still make an argument they go about 3 deep at pass rush. Now, again, it's not remotely what it was. Don't misunderstand me. But Kingsley Enagbare is trying to make himself some money this offseason, right? Whatever he does the next 3 games, if he comes out and balls out, he's going to make himself millions of dollars in free agency. Maybe it's with the Packers. Maybe it's with the Ravens. Who knows, right? But then you look at Barron Sorrell. I think he's played better in spurts this season than what we saw last year from Enagbare. So am I saying they're going to be the same defense without Micah? No, they're not. But this is the same team as last year, if not better, and they were pretty good on defense last year. So again, you've shown it before, so just go out and do it again. That's all I'm asking. If they can just be a good defense, not a great defense, just good, they can still win a lot of games. They can still be a threat. Point number 2, Hafley needs to get in his bag, and he needs to use Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper on the blitz more. Again, last season, Jeff Hafley came in. He blew the doors off of his expectations last year, in large part to what he did with this cast of players, the same one. Now, when he came in, no one knew who the hell he was. I certainly didn't. And I was following this defensive coordinator search like crazy. I'm sure you all were too, right? But he came in from Boston College as I think it was cover 2 is what he played, but primarily a man coverage scheme guy. But last year, he played primarily zone coverage all season due to the fact that they lost Jair. He didn't really trust the Packers corners at that point. I'm not even sure if he still does, to be honest. But my point in saying that is he changed his whole ideology to fit his players last year, which is what a really good coach does. And that's why I just loathed Joe Barry so much. And even Mike Pettin, because they had their scheme, they were rigid about it. Even if the scheme didn't make any sense for the guys they had. Didn't matter. They were going to run it no matter what, and they were just going to figure it out. Jeff Hafley is the total opposite. Like, I cannot stress enough, guys, the defense that we saw him run last year was not the defense that he wanted to run when he was hired. It's that simple. Now he has to do it again because Micah Parsons is out. The defense he's been running in 2025 thus far, he can't run that same defense without Micah Parsons. You can't throw Rashawn Gary over center and make him blitz, right? You can. He's done it before, but not well. You don't have a dominant pass rusher now like you did before. And then you don't have 4 other guys who can win like he did before. So now he gets to show us how good he is. And the crazy thing is, too, and this is how creative he is, if you look at the blitz rate from last year, the Packers don't show very many blitzes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they didn't have a high blitz rate despite the fact that they blitzed a lot. Let me explain that. Because they only consider it a blitz if you rush more than 4 guys. But he was able to disguise his blitzes so well, and his coverages too, I might add. He would only send 4 and drop 7 back in coverage, but you never knew who he was going to send. I think he's going to do that again the rest of this season. And one other thing I think they're going to do a lot more of, I mentioned it on the heading here, but they sent Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker a lot on blitzes last year. They are very, very good at that, especially Edge Cooper. Like, there were a lot of people that thought before Micah Parsons was acquired that Edgerrin Cooper was going to lead this team in sacks this year. I was one of them, by the way. I thought he could get like 8 to 10 sacks just from double-A gap blitzes. He's a very, very good blitzer. Quay Walker is also a very good blitzer. So I think that might be something he does. He's not done it much this season because he hasn't had to. But these are 2 really, really good blitzers that I think he's going to use a lot of in the next 3 games. I'll kind of end this point with this. If you guys think Jeff Hafley is an intriguing head coach candidate for people, and I'm not as sold that he's just guaranteed a head coaching job, by the way. There are a lot of really good contenders. I don't know how many openings there are going to be. Like the dude from, I think it's Bobby Slowick in Seattle, that dude's getting a job. The guy on the Texans right now, I know D'Amico Ryans runs that defense, but like whoever's their defensive coordinator, he's going to get looks. I know Vance Joseph on the Broncos is going to get looks. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Jeff Hafley is just going to be a head coach. But if he comes out and dominates and this defense doesn't miss a beat and this team goes on a run, by Jeff, he's going to be a head coach somewhere. Just saying that. Point number 3, at some point, turnover luck has to flip. And that can make a really big difference on how to get through this stretch. I've wondered quite a bit this year, though, if the fall off in turnovers is due to the lack of Hafley using some of these complex coverages and blitzes, right? He just did so much of it last season. I wonder if that's why they had a lot of turnovers last year. They had 32 turnovers last year. I can't talk, guys. I'm sorry. I'm running on fumes today. This year, it's been a bit more generic because he hasn't really had to use a lot of that stuff until he's needed to, right? Like that 3rd down against Detroit in the Thanksgiving game, he sent Xavier McKinney on a blitz. Jared Goff was lost, right? He did a lot more of that last season. He's going to do a lot more of it this season. I wonder if that might have led to more picks and more turnovers. Maybe a more generic game plan, because he's been able to do that, has led to the fall off in turnovers. Now, again, they've had probably 8 to 10 dropped picks this season, if not more than that. Probably actually more than that, to be honest. That part I would probably say isn't luck. But even when you look at bounces, right, a lot of them have gone against the Packers. Now, they did get the turnover against R.J. Harvey this last week. They could have had another 3 or 4 picks easily. But if they can start generating turnovers at the rate they did last season, late in this season, I think it can cover up some of these flaws on defense. And ironically, if you get much better luck, if it really swings the other direction, which it could, right? This defense could actually take a step ahead further than where they were with Micah. Now, again, that also can fall off at some point, but that just shows you how unfortunate it's been in 2025. Point number 4, you got some guys who, it's a true test for some of these guys. It's either show up or show out for some of these guys. You guys know already heard the outside noise from people, particularly their defense, right? A lot of national folks, even Packer fans, people I know, radio guys around Madison, right? They've all declared that this season's basically over. The best this team has played is when they've been counted out or doubted, right? Everybody thought they were going to lose that Lions game earlier this season. Then you look back at 2023 when everybody thought they were dead in the water and they go on a run and almost get to the NFC Championship game. They're hearing this stuff too, guys. These are humans, right? They're hearing it. They're seeing it on Twitter, right? Look at LVN, that stupid Ike Packers account. I'm sorry if any of you guys follow that account, but you shouldn't because the guy's a clown. He posted about LVN being a bust. Again, it's all for like rage baiting and engagement, so don't do it. But LVN essentially commented to it, and I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, like, wait and see. Like, I'm going to show you what's up. I think LVN's out for blood. I think he's finally healthy. If he can build on what we saw at the beginning of this season, I think it's going to be huge for this defense. He's got all the motivation to do it. He's been hearing it since he got drafted about how he's a bust. Look at Rashawn Gary. All he's heard this entire season is how he sucks and he's not worth the contract and whatever else, right? But now he's the guy. So you can go out there, Rashawn, and you can shut everybody up. On offense, right, everybody's been saying, can Jordan Love lead this team to the Super Bowl? And then I hear the national pundits say, this is just too much of a loss. And it probably is, right? But you got guys out there like Stephen A. Smith saying that he doesn't trust Jordan Love. And Stephen A. Smith is the most overpaid, pompous douche in sports commentary. He's never once had a good take, and he doesn't watch tape. So it's like, how do you even have a take? You don't even watch tape. Whatever. If I'm Jordan, I'm watching some of these guys, and I'm using it as bait, rage bait. I'm going to take the bait. I'm going to get excited about it. I'm going to get heated over it, right? This team is insanely talented still. They've shown it all season long. They have to hear some of this shit that's being said out there, and I would hope that you'd get inspired from it, right? That would light a fire in your ass, whatever it is, right? Point number 5, their offense has played lights out for 5 straight weeks. This might be a hot take, but I know we're all obsessing over Micah's injury, and if you can't tell, I'm pretty upset still, right? But I don't want to glaze over the fact that this Packers offense has looked worlds ahead of where they were earlier this season, but also where they were in 2024 at any point. We just talked about those games where the defense gave up a lot of points in 2024. If they had competent offense in that season last year, they would have gone a lot further. I know probably someone's going to think about, well, you got the same defense as last year, but they still didn't even win a playoff game. Yeah, because their offense couldn't hold up. You hold the Super Bowl champion Eagles to 22 points and you only score 16 or 13 or whatever it was. This team this season is not only going to score 13 points, they're going to score 20, 24, 26, 27 points, whatever it is, right? Jordan Love is just different this season. Simple as that. They were dog walking this Broncos team up and down the field. They'd scored basically every possession they were on. They should have had a touchdown on a couple of those. And it wasn't until they lost Watson, Zach Tom, and where it became obvious they were going to throw it, that's where they started to slow down on offense. But I've said it all year, guys. If this offense plays to 75% of their potential, it doesn't matter if the defense gives up more points. They're going to win a ton of football games that way. And Jordan Love, despite his 2 picks in this game, and one of them was bad, that I thought that the Dontavian Wicks tipped pass. Now, he should have caught that. I think Dontavian would have told you should have caught that, but Jordan would also tell you could have had a better ball there, right? I think that Jordan's playing at an MVP level, and if you get this Jordan Love, if you get this offense that we've been seeing, and if they don't fall off a cliff and start making mistakes again, I don't really care that they lost Micah. Now, I do, don't get me wrong. But if you can score 30 points consistently, this defense is good enough to hold the team to 25 or whatever it might be, right? Jaden Reed's back. He looks special, right? Christian Watson, when he's been insanely good. He might be playing on Saturday. Matthew Golden, again, we talked about him earlier. He played an outstanding game this week in limited reps, by the way. And then we saw what Dontavian Wicks did against the Lions, right? And he hasn't even been playing that much because of his ankle injury or whatever. So, we've even barely seen this offense at fully operational, right? And that's not even to mention, by the way, Luke Musgrave all of a sudden playing pretty well. They're finally using him correctly. They're not giving him bubble screens, and they're not throwing him, yak routes because the dude can't run after the catch. But best believe you get him on a linebacker, he can dust you. He did it against Hufanga in this last game, the play I was talking about earlier. Go back and watch that play. Not only did he make an insane diving catch, to get open like he did, Hufanga fell on his ass. That's how well he juked him out. So, again, I don't want to glaze this too much, but this team, this offense can win a lot of games the way they're playing. And they have the running game too. Let's talk about the running game quick. Josh Jacobs is banged up, but this running game has looked a lot better the last couple weeks. And if you can continue to build on it, make this team two-dimensional, right? They have not been two-dimensional at any point under Jordan since 2023 with Aaron Jones. Now, again, there were stretches last season where Josh was running well and Jordan was playing well, but not at this level. We see MVP level Jordan Love this year and C+ offensive line production in the run game. And speaking of the offensive line, they were a big concern early in the season. I'm still hesitant to say they're continuing to get really good or they are good or whatever, but in that first half against Denver, they were really good. Jordan barely had to come off his spot. And Zach Tom's not seriously hurt, so I feel good about where they're at in that aspect. I think they might be peaking at the right time on the offensive line. Now that Mike is hurt, right, this defense is going to have a much harder time winning games alone. So that means it's time for this offense to take over and win it, right? And we know they can. Look at the playoff teams, right? They can score on all of those teams. The question's going to be, though, can the defense hold them under 23 points? If they can, I think the Packers can still make a run at this. I do. Let's talk about the Bears game and kind of just bring it all together really quick. As far as the defense goes, again, to put a bow on it, I trust Jeff Hafley to weld together a defensive playbook that can still be successful. There are a lot of other really good stars, great players on this defense. And more importantly, I think that Matt LaFleur is going to come up with good game plans to win some of these games. I really do. Ultimately, their Super Bowl chances took a bit of a nosedive, right? And that's why this hurts so much. When you acquired Micah Parsons back in August, you also acquired expectations. And all of us have felt it this season. That's why we get so mad when they lose games to the freaking Browns. But it feels like it's been either make the Super Bowl. I'm not saying win it. It's hard to win the Super Bowl, right? Make the Super Bowl or it's a bust. Or win 2 playoff games or it's a bust. Now, can you win the Super Bowl without your second best player, your fourth best player in Tucker, your second best pass rusher in Wyatt, whatever? You can. But it's going to be a lot harder, right? If there was ever a year to do it, though, it's this one. I think the Rams are really good. But if we have to go to LA and play, that's a pseudo home game for the Packers. Inside, by the way. Everyone else, I think they can beat everyone else offensively alone. Through 2.5 quarters of the Broncos game, the Packers had just separated themselves in the NFC, in my opinion. Now they're right back in the mix again with 4 or 5 other teams that could win it. So why not the Packers? That's the difference, right? Your Super Bowl chances go down. That's why this stings, but they're still alive. This is not the time to punt on this team. I think that they can make a lot of noise the next few weeks. So, again, let's talk about the next few weeks really quick. They're still favored in their next 3 games. They're favored in Chicago by, I think it's 2 points, 1.5 points. There's a real scenario, too, by the way. If the Ravens beat the Patriots this week, which they're favored in, and then the Lions beat the Steelers, that means the game next week for the Ravens is meaningless. So you could go into that game with the Ravens resting their players. I would, by the way. They're beat the hell up. They're even beat up as the Packers. But it's a catch-22 because you want the Lions to lose another game, because if they do, that all but clinches the playoffs for the Packers. They just basically need one more game. So, again, going through the playoff chances, I want you guys to feel better about everything really quick. If the Packers lose out, so they lose all 3 of their next 3 games, they still have a 44% chance to make the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen, but I just wanted to point it out. They still have a 44% chance to make the playoffs. If they win one of their last 3, they jump to an 80%. Doesn't matter which one. Now, if their one win is against Chicago this week, they have a 95% chance to make it. If they beat the Bears, but they lose to the Ravens and Vikings, they have a 20% chance to win the division, but still a 90% chance to make the wild card. So again, to win the division, and they really should be striving for that, I think, you basically need to beat the Bears this week. And then you need to win one of the final 2 at minimum. If you can do that, you basically win the division. So, in other words, to make the playoffs, you got to get to 10 wins. If you want to win the division, you're going to have to get to 11 at least. So, again, if you lose to the Bears this weekend, it's really, really hard to win the division. The Bears would have to lose out. And they could, because they play the 49ers and Lions, by the way. But with that being said, just win this week and figure out the rest later. Now, whether or not the Packers win Saturday night, it comes down to who plays, in my opinion. I think if Watson plays, I think they have a really good chance to score a lot of points. I think if Watson and Tom play, I have zero concern. I think the Packers can score 30 points in this team. If Evan Williams doesn't play, though, but Zach Tom and Watson do, I'm a little concerned about that running game for the Bears. Evan Williams is a massive part of the Packers' run defense. So I do think the Packers, they can score 30 on this Bears defense. I think Watson's going to play. If I had to guess, Zach Tom won't play. I think that Evan Williams will play. But they're going to go into this game, guys, with a chip on their shoulder. And they're going to come out red hot on offense. That's my prediction. I think the Packers end up winning it. And I did not think this until today recording this. I finally got out of my depression slump here about the game. I think the Packers win it 30-27. The defense is going to do just enough to win it. That's how I see it. Then it's on to Baltimore at home for the penultimate game of the season. And then the final game, they take on the Vikings in Minnesota. So 2 of the last 3 on the road. Let's go out and get a win. Just beat the Bears. The rest of it is tomorrow's problem, or in this case, Sunday's problem. I think the Packers are still the better team, even with all the injuries, than the Bears. They certainly have the better quarterback. They have the better receiving core. Bears probably have a better offensive line. But I think the Packers can score on their defense. I think the Bears will score on our defense as well. But I do think the Packers end up winning it. Appreciate you guys listening. There probably won't be a Bears preview episode this week since we just saw them, and work's crazy, holidays are crazy. The game is on Saturday, so Sunday I'll likely record a recap of that episode, or of that game, and then I'll probably record a Ravens preview the following week. But hopefully this podcast made you guys feel a little bit better about things. I know it's a long one. I'm pretty overly tired. I feel like I rambled a bit too much in this episode, but I appreciate you guys listening. Give it a like. Give it a subscribe for me. Download the podcast. Send me your questions, and I appreciate you guys listening. 46 minutes and 50 seconds. I appreciate it, guys. I will see you next week. Go Pack, go.